Absolutely. There we go.
There we go. All right, we'll start in. Hey, this is Wicked Spursy, Mike, Steve, and Dave. Got some special guests we're going to introduce you to momentarily. But first, Steve, how you doing, buddy?
I'm fantastic, Dave. I've made it through my busy week of the month, work-wise, and I've sort of forgotten what's happened in the last 7 days. So I guess the international break came at a good time because my brain is all over the place. So you're going to be looking for a real fun conversation for me tonight, because scatterbrained is probably the adjective I'd use for me right now. And it's not going to help that I've got this delicious elderberry goza that I'm drinking too. I'll be all over the place. It's very nice. Fun time.
Quick question: When is the trophy presentation for your league dominating third and fourth grade outfit?
I did a little mini ceremony in the lodge. We had to come inside because it was downpouring when the season wrapped up. But I lined all the kids up, gave them their medals, gave them a little, good for you. This is what I saw. This is what I liked. Great job. Keep it up. Good luck in the future. That sort of thing. It was a great time.
Everybody loves Coach Steve.
It was really weird. Like out of the corner of your eye, catch parents like filming you, giving their kid like their medal and little pep talk. Wasn't sure how I'd feel about that, but I just ignored it, did my thing, and everybody seemed happy for it. So
very nice. How about you, Mike? How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good, Dave. I just want you to know that I did just watch the Beckham documentary, so I made sure that after Lucas's game on Sunday that I told him how disappointed I was in him.
All right, what'd you think? What'd you think of that doc? Beth and I finished it the other day as well.
Something that I kind of already knew is that the European press are kind of disgusting in the way that they treat their celebrities and their athletes.
European,
and that I have kind of a newfound respect for David Beckham, like that I didn't know. I should have had. He's definitely. And obviously, it's not like this was a hit piece type of a documentary. It was it was from the perspective of David and
it was theirs. And for sure.
But I mean, they didn't lay off any of the criticisms of any of the primary characters in the documentary. So I think that obviously it being from their perspective, I thought it was great, and I do have a newfound respect for him, especially as a family man.
Yeah, candidly, I was, I remember all of those things happening. Like I'm roughly the same age as David Beckham. So I remember kind of watching that from afar as just a guy in the US who heard about this dude going through that stuff and marrying a Spice Girl and whatnot. I thought it was interesting how they handled the infidelity stuff, right? Like they acknowledged it for the most part, but then they also kind of said, like, this is our private stuff. Their relationship has clearly persevered through a lot of brutal, public flogging, if you will, that they've experienced. And with celebrities, just a relationship persevering is its own unique thing. So yeah, I too walked away with kind of I'm intrigued by them, interested in them, and thought it was a cool, well done production. But
question for you, Dave.
Yeah.
How does it feel? How does it feel to be the same age as David Beckham?
I actually am. So we were born very close to each other.
Yeah.
You guys are
not in proximity, but in date.
I'm not sure if I'd rather be the same age or as good looking as he is. I think I'd take the latter, but I'll take closer in age to old Davy boy and the shared name, which is less and less common these days.
I got the looks here,
Absolutely.
In Wicked Spursy land.
Hey, enough about us. Let's talk about our special folks who have joined us. So we are joined by three individuals that come from different places, roles, experiences, etc. But the common link is sports science, and they also are all just huge fans of Wicked Spursy. Actually, can't say that yet, but hoping that'll be the case. So I'm excited. I'm excited to introduce to you a longtime friend of the podcast, my very own sister Gina, who's with us. So we're glad to have her. My good friend Nixon, who is going to tell you about himself in a few moments, and our new friend Jeremy, who we're also really happy to have with us. So let's do some quick intros. So Gina, Nixon, Jeremy, let's do just tell us a little bit about yourself and who's your football club if you have one, and how did you come to be a supporter of that club? Nixon, let's start with you. What do you got for us?
Oh, you threw me on the spot.
Absolutely.
Okay. Give you a little backstory. So growing up, being originally from Bahamas, there wasn't a lot of soccer, football growing up back home. There wasn't. But me with a Haitian background, my parents are from Haiti. Every time my cousins would come to visit from Haiti, they would grab our basketball or our volleyball and they would start playing soccer with it and kick, 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 So it drove me crazy. And then till my mom sat me down and said, Haiti actually was in the World Cup final against Italy and they lost back in, I think, 76, I think it was. But so that was the, hey, wait, soccer, it's a big deal. So football is a big deal. So that was my first.
Just to interrupt real quick, his mom and his aunt actually referenced that last weekend when I was in town. Haiti playing in the World Cup final. Yeah,
wow, I didn't even know.
So it was either 76. So it really meant a lot to them because in 2023 they literally referenced it. Was it last weekend?
Yeah, you were here last weekend. So that's a little bit of but I have a little, and I'll tell you more, but I have a little bit of PTSD because it was at 1994 when Brazil was in the World Cup and they ended up losing. I'll never forget. They blacked out the game. They didn't put the game on TV. They put all other games on, but the final they didn't put it on TV. And I just remember there was almost a riot going on the islands. Everyone was going to go back to the TV station and talk to the powers to be because there was no World Cup on. But anyway, okay, that's it. So I grew up, when I was in college, I'd wake up every morning and the matches were on, and I would just remember I just enjoyed watching them. So I kind of like Chelsea a little bit, to be honest. I'll just be honest about that, especially after going and visiting Jeremy. Remember we made the trip and toured the facility. We met some of the, players and people. It was really cool. So, I kind of felt, a little, and they gave me a jersey. I got a jersey too from them. So, I'm a little bit of Chelsea. So guys, don't beat me up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right? Nixon, it's been great to have you on the podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
But hey, with it being Wicked Spursy, hey, I did work for the Spurs. So, I was going to, so technically I'm in, I'm in.
For clarity, which Spurs did you work for? I just wanted to make sure we address that.
Antonio Spurs Basketball Club. That's the one I for,
the other Spurs.
The other Spurs, yeah.
The other Spurs, but
the ones with a few more trophies in their trophy case than our Spurs, but that's soon to be resolved. Yeah.
But I did enjoy the game at Fulham where we went to watch Fulham play, and we had tea and cake at halftime. So, great experience. We went over there. I'll never forget that one. So that's right. Kind of where we're at. So
it is good to have you, sir. Thanks for being with us. Gina, how about you? Quick intro, and I think we know which team you support, but I'd love to hear your version of that.
I am Dave's favorite sister, as you all know, and I have spent most of my life not being a soccer fan because my work setting is a high school and I've watched just really bad soccer for 20 years and it gets hard. 3 levels of varsity, JV, and freshman. It's hard to sit there and watch bad soccer and be entertained. But probably I would say the pandemic, Dave, wouldn't you say? I kind of started taking the time. Dave just wanted to talk about it and I had nothing but time to listen to him and watch the games.
So sorry.
You're right.
And then I realized hey, if I watch these games and talk to Dave about the Spurs, he buys me gear. So I've been getting good gear for gifts since then. So that's kind of how I fell into Tottenham. He's also made me a White Sox fan. And it's hard. It's tough times out there. But
yeah, not the best brother in the world when you put it in that perspective.
Nope.
But Jeannie, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us. And
I was also wondering, am I the first female ever on Wicked Spursy?
So I hate to burst your bubble. Actually, one of our first guests was a woman.
That might have been before I became an avid.
Yeah, it was when we first started doing the pod. She was with the Albany Spurs supporters group. I think her name was Katie, if I remember correctly. And Katie, I think still listens to to the pod because I've seen some stuff online from her. So yeah, you would be the second woman, but
Shout out to Katie then.
The first sibling, at least.
the first sibling on Wicked Spursy. You got it.
You don't want my
Love
sister
first.
on this.
Good to have you here, though, Gene. And Jeremy, over to you, sir. Tell us about yourself and tell us about your club affinity, if you would.
Yeah, so originally from Leicester in England, but my mum's whole family's from Manchester, and so inherited Manchester United from my grandma and granddad at a very young age. But I actually grew up playing rugby, and in the UK, is sort of you're either rugby or football. And so then moved to the States in 2003. And that's when I really became a football fan. Essentially because there was no rugby to watch, right? It just wasn't on the TV over here until the last few years, but the Premier League was on. And so just got super into it, and that's when I really, really started enjoying it. But, it was something I'm sure you guys will love hearing about, growing up, just winning all these trophies, it was just unbelievable. It's
not familiar. Not familiar.
No, I was a little confused when Steve started his story about like winning these trophies. I'm like, hang on, I thought it was on a Spurs podcast. Like
my third and fourth graders.
It made much more sense as you got into the story.
Yeah, it turns out when you coach a very niche rec soccer group in northern Vermont, and you actually know what you're doing, it does make things a little bit unfair.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, Mike referenced that Beckham documentary. So first, have you had a chance to watch that? And second,
yes.
So what being more closely from that era and area, how did that sit with you?
Well, just watched it all play out at the time, and it's a very common story in the UK, with our athletes, our celebrities. It's just the way the press just tear them down. It's just, it's really disgusting, and so at the time, just remember feeling for David and his family, like everything they were going through. Like it was brutal, like just unbelievable to watch them go through it. And I think what I didn't realize at the time, because I was pretty young then, was that he was like 22 years old. This isn't like, he's a 35, 40-year-old man, dealing with this. He's 22. He's playing for his country. He's had, one little random act, that's sort of out of character from the guy. And he's just vilified. And he's a wonderful human being, like a wonderful human being. Like I've heard stories from when he was an under 21 England international as the captain, and it was one of the press guys' birthdays or anniversaries, or his wife's birthday. David showed up at his room on a team day off, took his kids out for the day, babysat for his kids as the England captain for the youth team, so this guy could have the day with his wife, right? These are the things that he does. And then even like, when we played Miami, when I was with NYCFC, David's there, he's on the field, and he's shaking hands with everybody on the field, like going around, like actively, all the staff and coaches are on the field after the game, and he's a full part of that. And I turn around, he's got one of our coaches' phones in his hand, and he's recording a message from his mum, because he's from Manchester. Right, and he's like, hey, just wanted to say hello. I'm here with Dan, and just taking time out, and just as big a guy as he is, as big a celebrity, just what a wonderful guy. So I think some of that came across in the documentary, and I just think it showed him in a really good light, but not falsely so. I think is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. Great perspective. Thanks for sharing that. That's good stuff. All right, let's get to what we're here to talk about. And I would just encourage the whole group. Feel free to anyone jump in at any point in time. But I guess the visual I have in my mind is, many sports fans also have some experience playing sports. It's kind of like I used to be in the education business, and one of the biggest flaws of that is everybody went to school, so everybody thinks they know something about how school is supposed to work, right? Because everybody went. And sports fans that have played sports all think that they know how everything's supposed to work as well. So when I flash back on my high school experience, and Gina knows the guys I'm going to talk about, when I would sprain my ankle playing American football, the coach would literally hand you a Home Depot bucket and say, go fill that up with ice and water and put your foot in it and let us know when you can play again. Like that was it. That was the extent of the support you got as an athlete. And we know that even at the levels like that, that has changed significantly. I'd love to hear kind of what does that evolution of sports science look like from when it didn't exist in lower levels, but it did at the higher levels of sport, to kind of where that sits now. What does that kind of pattern look like over the past maybe couple decades, if I'm painting a picture correctly with that? Anybody want to take a shot?
I can start that, because I still do work at that lowest level, I'll call it. We still fight that mentality because the coaches are old school. Like I still have kids coming in saying I did the ice bucket, or my grandma told me to Epsom salt tonight.
Right.
Everybody, I didn't get water when I was a kid. I don't know why all these kids need stuff. Like, it's really still a mentality of a lot of these coaches. So from an education standpoint, we're constantly trying to explain why we do the things we do. I'm sure Nixon and Jeremy have a different clientele they're dealing with, but I'm dealing with minors whose parents at home are the ones dictating what's happening. And it's still hard. It's hard to overcome those old traditions and things we all grew up doing, even though science proves otherwise. And you could talk to your blue in the face about evidence and the science, and my population is hard to come around.
And Gina, for context for anybody listening, you're in a high school environment, but you do have a couple full-time training staff, and that spectrum is like there are schools that outsource their training just at events, right? And
we're well off compared to a lot of there's two of us full-time athletic trainers. It's a big school. It's over 3,600 kids. But so we're not. It's not brand new there, but it's getting people to buy into what you're doing. And so, our kids have it good. And the ones who come back from programs less than D1 are like, oh, you guys are better than my college trainers. Well, you also need to realize your college trainer has 2 people responsible for 20 entire athletic programs and traveling and all these things that they just can't do a good job. Like, it's not necessarily their fault. It's the setting. So our kids do have it good, but we're still fighting the old myths and the old theories and grandpa and grandma. And I mean,
I gotta say,
stuff from like the Mexican grandmas and Filipino grandmas have some fantastic things that honestly probably work better than what America does, but it's just not normal and no science and all of that.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was actually impressed when I did the rec soccer coaching this year that they explicitly stated in the rules, we're not heading the ball. Like, this is not a healthy thing for kids to be doing at this age. Except, with 3rd and 4th graders, that was an easy conversation. Why can't I head the ball? Because I'm your coach and I told you not to.
Right.
End of discussion. Like, you don't have to argue with me. You're just going to do it. And your parents are going to have my back because I'm taking care of their kid for an hour and they don't have to deal with it. So
nice.
But still, it's one of those things where I don't know if I would have seen that if I did this, even 5-10 years ago.
Correct. It's all evolving for sure.
Nixon and Jeremy, you guys work in different levels of sport. What does that look like across the decades for you?
So to piggyback off of Yancey, the way I would say is, so in our setting, in the university setting where I'm at right now, it's just a little bit different from what Gina's experienced. And even though sometimes we get the curveballs from, the parents that get involved a little bit, but it's fine. We do a great job of educating them. At my level, at the university setting, what I find is, for me, it's just real important of like building a relationship with the parents and then the care that their students are going to have. And when I let them know that it's not just me, right? It's like a team of 20 people that if I'm stuck on something, there's a resource that I can go to, to, a specialist that's with a different team that can help. So that's one thing that's for me, I build that trust. And then two, my approach is, hey, first thing we do is we respect the biology, right? Whenever there's an injury, obviously there's tons of research that's going on. And, like you said, things are continuing to evolve. So that's one thing we do. So I have, in my downtime, I'm a nerd, so I love reading anything science. So like, I just love reading anything science or anything related to performance. So I'm always trying to see, okay, what's best course of treatment for, boom, ankle instability? What's best course of treatment for, shoulder instability or whatever that's going on? But when that happens, I also let the parents know, in addition to the students, hey, each of you guys are very, everyone's different. I can't treat everybody the exact same, for example, and this is just random. I'll just use this for example. Like somebody would say, hey, can those cups that, using cupping, that really helps me, and then on athlete A, athlete B, they'll be like, hey, don't use that on me. Like that thing don't work. I tried it once. And then, so it's just, everything's so different. And I really try to individualize care, for the students, but I don't do it myself. Like that's one thing that's a little different from my setting compared to Yanti's setting. Like her setting is, she's going through 300-400 athletes, by herself a day. Well, her and Maddie, they're going through it by a day. Whereas I have 12 guys to take care of. And, I have tons of resources. If I ever get in a jam, I can walk over to another building and grab another therapist to help me, or, athletic trainer to help me. And so it's just, my setting is just a little bit different. But I would say, like how I said, I see things evolve is just that, it's kind of up to the clinician or the practitioner to just really stay ahead of the curve and not fall for, some of the snake oil stuff that's out there, because people are out there promising, that they can heal this, heal that. But, again, respect the biology, really collaborate with your team to give the best course of treatment to whoever athlete or individual you're caring for. That's just my take on it.
Nixon, two things come to mind. First, you just made me think of, oh man, this is probably 10, 12, 15 years ago. You remember those little bands with like the magnets in them?
Yeah.
I swear those worked for a while. But hey,
they still work for my dad. That and the copper knee brace.
Nice. Or the inserts in your shoes, right? All that good stuff. Nixon, I'm curious. You mentioned parents, which is something I didn't think about. At the higher ed level. So like if you've got let's just say you've got a 20-year-old athlete that you're rehabbing on something. So you're engaging with the parents in that process as well, or what's that look like?
Yeah, for me, I do. And the reason is it's kind of selfish for me because sometimes the parents are going to give you information that's really important that the students probably can give you,
Sure. Yeah.
And on top of that, I don't necessarily want a worried parent. So I just embrace them and kind of make them a part of it. And then if you do that from the beginning, then you won't have anybody questioning you because they'll know that, oh, this guy actually really has the best interest of my child at heart. So, that's how I do it. And I just embrace them. I'm not standoffish with any parents. And, usually when you do that, you get really nice thank you cards at the end of the treatment, or, they send you a nice gift basket, because sometimes parents just want to be involved, Yeah. So.
Very true. As a parent of college age kids, I concur. Absolutely. Jeremy, how about over to you at your level of sport? What's this all look like and how's it changed over the last couple decades?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting. I've done college and then 3 different professional leagues. So it's interesting to see the differences as you go between levels and leagues. I think if I take sort of like a higher, more systems level view, that's sort of where I've been operating the last 10 years or so of my career as a performance director, is referring to that team that Nixon sort of brought up. Is what I think we've seen is you going from systems where as you come up through the levels, maybe you've got your athletic trainer, then at the next level, you've got your athletic trainer and your strength coach. And then you keep going and you've got more ATs and more strength coaches, and I think we developed in that way for a while. And we had, most often than not, even at the professional level, 2 silos, right? You've got sports medicine and you've got strength and conditioning, and they're constantly going like this, right? You've got one trying to put the brakes on, one trying to put the gas on, both thinking they're right, and the truth being right in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of where we sat for a long time. What we're seeing now is an evolution where some of those roles that we had as strength coaches and as ATs, we're getting more and more specialization. So now we've got physical therapy coming in alongside ATs. We've got massage therapy coming in. So we're starting to see different specialties in sports medicine, as well as on the strength and conditioning side. Now we've got full-time nutritionists coming in. We've got data scientists. We've got your conditioning guys. You've got your weights guys, your corrective rehab type guys. So people's scopes of their roles are starting to become narrower, but they're getting deeper and deeper and deeper, right? So you're getting real deep expertise within very specialist areas. And then we're starting to add in now layers of objective data, right? So we're monitoring every movement they take on the field. We're measuring heart rate. We're measuring their biomechanics in the weight room, through 3D motion capture, force plates in the ground, different isometric sort of strength measurements, right? So now we're starting to be able to measure outcomes, right? So did your treatment work? Did your strength program work? How much volume of work have you done this week? How many sprints, how many decelerations, how many changes of direction? All these different factors are now going in. And so we're flooding the market, or flooding the teams with data. And now we're starting to see an evolution of, okay, well, what does it mean? What do we do about it? And that's sort of where my role as a performance director came in, where you sort of have now one person to sit above that team and coordinate the response, right? So how are we going to work as a group with this data, with the coaching staff, with the front office? And because injury prevention and sports science, the data is only useful if it changes someone's behavior, right? Usually coach or GM, right? And so we're collecting this data to drive behavior change. Like, did practice get modified? Did our strategy on recruitment get modified based on how we're actually measuring this stuff? And then, is the athlete seeing the right person at the right time, right? So it's not now, is it sports medicine or is it strength and conditioning? It's when, and both, right? So everybody needs the input, right? And so how do you coordinate that response between practitioners, I think, has become sort of an art form on guiding the athlete through the system and out onto the field and keeping them healthy.
Nice. Hey, Jeremy, when you start talking data, I see Steve's antenna perk up. So Steve, what's going through your mind as you hear that?
Well, I mean, that comment about data that's my life, right? Like data is only as good as, what you can do with it, what you can act on. So just hearing that, it just makes me happy as a data nerd. But I do have, as we've been talking about this evolution of sports science and the applications to the players, it got me thinking about something that I've only very recently started to notice at the professional level mostly. And it's in my opinion, I think it's probably going to be the next evolution of this whole sports science conversation. And it's not the physical aspect, it's the mental one, right? So we've seen a couple of players this season so far come out and talk about, their battles with mental health and fatigue and, just external factors. We've talked about last week, the yips, some of those different things that pop up. So I'm just curious, as people who are involved in the sports science with players across all different demographics, how do you see, this mental health portion layering either on top of or working alongside some of the work that you're all doing?
you know, for me, as we built these teams, it was a critical part, but I think it's often spoken about, but there's not a lot done about it. You know, I think the mental component, you can split it into a couple of things. There's the fatigue, there's sort of the cognitive component of it, which frankly, we don't, I don't know if we don't know enough about how to measure it and what to do with that information. So that there's really not a ton in sport done on that side of it. And then the psychological piece, which is a growing field in sport, it's still emerging for me in sport. You know, there's still a huge portion of general managers, coaches that just don't believe in it. You know, it's a huge issue in sport because, like, from my level, you've got a guy who just signed $100 million contract. Anyone want to hear that guy complain about how sad he is? Right? You know, but it's an incredibly lonely place for a 22-year-old to be, because like, when can this person ever let their guard down? Right? When can they really ever be themselves? When can they like go out and enjoy a night out with their friends? Right? And so it's quite lonely and quite boring for a lot of these guys. And then you're dealing with immense pressure. You know, we'll take David Beckham, for example, still talks about the mental health battles he has, you know, dealing with that incident that was in 1998. Right? And this is a guy that's been at the top, you know, and is still at the top and is still dealing with that. So how we're helping these young men and women deal with the pressures of carrying a nation's hopes on their back, or carrying a team's hopes on their back, and then the vilification that can come if they don't perform every single night. You know, I think it's a huge part that sits right alongside what we do, because often, and you know, I'll turn over to Gina and Nixon here, because your athletic trainers are really your first line of defense. They're sort of your first aiders in the mental health world, you know, because that kid's going to sit on the table with the trainer, and that's really one of the only places that they're safe to talk about this stuff. All right, safe to let their guard down. That and I would get it sometimes in the weight room, but yeah, that's where I see it fitting right in with what we do, because we're the ones that they talk to.
Gina, what's that look like for you at your level?
He's absolutely right. Like we hear all the gossip, we hear all the stories, we hear all the things. The training room really is just kind of the place where everybody talks about everything. But then on the flip side, one of my projects for this winter is we have all kinds of emergency action plans, but I need to write a mental health emergency action plan, and we don't have one, and nobody's ever told us to have one. But we have had instances where you hear a kid say something, or somebody tells you a kid is thinking something, and you're like, we don't have a plan for how to deal with this. It's a Saturday afternoon. Who do I call? Who do I pass that along to? Because that's out of my realm of expertise, but I sure know I need to get the right person involved. And just for an example, last week I have a potential D1 kid playing football, I'll say, with a season-ending injury, junior year, needs lots of film. And to me and my coworker, we're like, okay, you're set up with the surgeon, we're doing therapy, we're going to get you stronger before surgery, etc. Well, then my coworker talks to mom, and mom says she can't get him out of bed, he's not showering, he's not doing all these things. And you forget that he's a 16-year-old kid, but he's got all of this pressure on him because he's expected to get a Division I scholarship, and now he doesn't have film, and now what are we going to do? Next year is his senior year. Like, there's just all these things that, even though we see these kids day in, day out, I don't realize he's not showering, and B, like, okay, this is a little bit more going on. And I see this all the time, so this is nothing to me. This is the first time he's gone through this situation, and this is life altering to him and what he expects. So sometimes it's good to get those reminders that, like, this is not as easy as I think it is, and this is a bigger deal than I think it is, and this affects him in more ways than I realize it's affecting him. Like, you don't get all the information all the time, and sometimes you need to take a step back and and see what's actually happening.
And Gina, I'm going to make the assumption that in your space, you've got a lot of connections medically that you can make referrals to, and obviously you direct kids to their family physicians and whatever it may be. But I'm guessing in that mental health space, when you realize that a student needs to talk to someone, you don't really have the roster of folks to call on, right? Like people are more on their own.
School day, there's counselors available.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
when I'm in the training room is not when the counselors or anybody else is in the building. So like,
Yeah.
we did have a thing where we needed some help for somebody on like a Saturday afternoon. And that's when you're like, hold up, who do I call? What do I do? This is not a university. People are not on call. Like, and again, they're still minors. So kind of everything needs to run through mom and dad. It gets complicated that you've got kids who they might tell you something and they don't want mom and dad to know. Now, if it's a danger to anyone, of course you deal with that. But there's just a lot of questions when they're minors, and school where Nixon has it different. He can kind of control those variables more and handle things on his own, whereas I don't have that.
Because he's only got 12 kids to worry about, is what you're saying, right? Nixon, what do you think on this question from Steve?
As I'm hearing, you speak, Dave and Steve and Mike, it just, my memory's just kind of jogging back, right, to what about 2012, 2013, when I actually was in the same space with Jeremy, and I, for the first time, actually got to saw the importance of, a mental, sports psychologist, just because, we were dealing with an athlete who came back from a very gruesome injury where, he probably could have lost his leg, and just to see how he was able to work with sports psych and to actually go on to truly excel, it was just watching that, that kind of gave you a true appreciation for what was happening. And then actually it became a big, believer and like, yo, this is important, because people actually do, because before that I hadn't really understood mental health, showing my age a little bit, but then you get to different spaces and you're like, yo, like Jeremy said, like, we can't handle all of this. We need specialized people in different areas, and like, let's approach it as a group. You go to different teams, and the first thing, hey, we don't have a mental health coach here. We need one. We need a sports psychologist here, because mental health is real. Especially, well, I wouldn't say especially in this day and age, but it's just more awareness to it now, right? There's just probably much more awareness to it, and honestly, it's just. It's so important right now, especially in this day and time. In my space right now in the university setting, I'm fortunate, if something happens, I could go over to the next building, or a lot of times our sports psychs, they just come to practice, and they're just sitting there for practice, and hey, anybody need to see me or whatever, because sometimes you do have to bridge that relationship, like, hey, you can trust this guy, he's definitely going to help you, much better than I can, because I'll probably tell you how to handle it, it's not professional, so but yeah, no, yeah, and like, honestly, the piggyback though on like what Jeremy said, like, or the evolution of sports science, it's like, nowadays it's not efficient. It's really not efficient to try to do everything by yourself. Like, there's so much. Like, why not have a group of 8 people who could, like, split up the pie and you make it much more efficient. Instead of trying to do everything yourself, like, those days are gone. You just sitting there, like, it's not in the best interest of anybody, not the club, not the athlete, not yourself, so anyway, just wanted to share that part.
All right. Outstanding.
Sorry, Gina, go ahead, and even trying to jump in.
From a mental health standpoint, it's going to filter up to you guys in those higher levels, because my kids are so much more open about therapy. They're so much more, like, I have a kid who leaves every Thursday and she's like, it's therapy Thursday. Like, there's no shame in it. These kids don't care. It's such a thing to them that it's normal and accepted, that you guys may not be there yet in the college and professional levels, but these teenagers are so much more open about it that it, in a sport level, I think it is going to become just more of a, just another day at the office where these kids are expecting more mental health help, if that makes sense.
That's interesting too, though, Gina, because my experience in the school setting affirms that. I know that my wife Beth, her experience affirms that as well. It'll be interesting when that happens, as it trickles up, the divide between old school coaches and that mindset and kids who are much more transparent and open about that. There's a collision
But
there waiting to happen,
those
right?
school coaches aren't going to be connecting with those kids, you know.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah, valid.
Like,
from what I'm seeing though, I from what I've seen, I feel like the coaches nowadays are really veering towards, hey, go get the extra help, you need it. Like that's just what I'm seeing, you know.
Nice.
Just because the world has changed, you know, like the world really has changed. So like that old school mentality is gone. Like toughen up. No, there's so much going on. So.
Gotcha. Jeremy, did you have something more on this one?
Yeah, just that, you know, to echo on these, is that it really does reach every level. You know, I think we've seen very worryingly, there's been a number of suicides within Premiership academies, you know, with top football clubs back home, you know, including my former group. So I think you think about the access that the fan has to the players these days, it is so much greater than it was when we were coming up. You know, we talk about, you know, we're from a different era, and these days it's more important. It sort of is, right? You've got these athletes who've got 1 million followers. You have a bad game, they've all got access right into your cell phone, right? And they're sitting. Guys are coming off the ice, the field. The first thing they do is open their phone, right? And so they just got this stream of negativity if they've had a bad game or if they're on a bad run, you know, and it's vile stuff. You know, all that stuff that was going to Beckham, but it's on your phone, right? And it's everyone gets their say.
Yeah,
I can't imagine you know, Roy Keane having a social media account back then, because he probably would have tried to seek out every single one of those people and
I'd say that would be true. I don't think anyone would have dared leave anything other than a nice polite comment on Roy's Roy's social media, you know.
That's just and again, that's just a sign of the times and things, how things are changing.
I one of the players one time, we're in the playoffs, you know, and he's on his phone, and I'm like, wait, why are you on your phone? Like, it's just gonna be, like Jeremy said, all bad stuff. And the player turns around and looks at me and he's like, Nixon, this is all I know. He's like, I get on the phone. And when he said that, I was like, whoa, you know, like it was just, I have a Twitter that I don't even have on my phone. I check it once every couple of months, you know, but it's just like these, you know, younger athletes, you know, it's kind of a part of them. And, you know, it maybe that part of it triggers, you know, the mental health issues that's going on, you know, does. But I'm just saying, like, oof. Yeah.
Mike, I know you had a question you wanted to throw out there. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so not to pivot completely away from the mental health, because this actually has it's not a natural segue, but it does have a little bit, it plays a little bit into it. But I have always kind of been interested. I'm also a mental health
Something of a scientist myself.
I'm a healthcare professional myself.
I like to look at data myself.
So I like I see the physical injuries that happen to a lot of I work at the University of Vermont Medical Center. So we do treat a lot of the athletes, and we see a lot of these athletes that post physical injury. But my question actually has to do with nutrition and how that's come along, because when I was younger and I played high school football, and I know Vermont is not necessarily known as the you know the highest level of high school athletics or football in the country, outside of maybe hockey. but there was no, we were always pushed to be bigger, stronger, faster. And it was through weight training, it was through eating, but there was never any kind of controlled diets or anything like that. And then there was no education after even your high school career ended, and for nutrition to help you to continue your life without, without necessarily gaining 300 pounds because you didn't ever learn how to, curb your eating or change your diet from what you had been eating when you were an athlete, because obviously exercise patterns change. What you're doing for exercise changes. Some people just stopped exercising, like myself. And mostly because of an injury that forced me out of the sport. But I'm seeing it with my son in the younger at the younger levels. He plays club soccer at one of the bigger clubs in Vermont, and they are pushing not just diet, but they're pushing and trying to fight against the sports drink. The sports drink community, because you have all this new stuff out there, Prime, that claims to be a better sports drink than Gatorade, and then Gatorade's trying to combat that with their own stuff, and then Pedialyte's doing something now, and like,
hey Mike,
have all this different stuff.
Just be careful here. Don't screw up our AG1 sponsorship we're trying to get. Just
I'm not gonna shit on them. So
all right, good.
I'm just saying, so at the younger level of soccer where I see my son, and my son is very resistant to changing his diet to be a more rounded athlete. I call him Snacks.
Because he's how old, right?
Because he's 11, and
right. What 11-year-old is curious about diet changes.
He had bagel bites for dinner tonight.
Solid.
But his coaches are pushing healthy diets. So how is nutrition not necessarily grown, but how does that play into each of your jobs on a daily basis? Because I know Jeremy had actually already mentioned it, and that's kind of piqued my interest because a lot of our sports injuries, a lot of the mental health that happens after the athlete's career is over has to do with some of their nutrition. So how do you guys deal with that on a daily basis?
My setting is so different from theirs. I just hope my kids have eaten, because they don't all have food at home. Some do, some don't. We buy granola bars out of our own money for the kids who come in and they're like, I'm gonna pass out. Well, did you eat today? No. Okay, well, here's a granola bar. Go try to finish. And then even my future D1 kids, I've got some elite athletes that come in 4 hours before a football game, smashing McDonald's and Chick-fil-A. So we can talk till we're blue in the face, but they don't want to hear it yet. And I don't think they'll really make those changes until they're actually in college and see oh, maybe I really shouldn't be eating a Baconator.
When they're in a more controlled environment where
yes.
So Nixon, as they come to your level, do you see that transition happen? Do you see 18-year-olds eating Big Macs and 19-year-olds getting it together, or how's that play out?
So
Coach
usually
Bray would never allow that.
So usually a lot of them will come in and they're a little messy with their diets and eating, but our nutritionists, they'll jump on them from right away. They do a nutrition screen when we're as a part of the intake. There's mental health screen, there's nutrition screen. So if somebody's flagged, which is really helpful for me, the nutritionist, hey, this person was flagged. I need to sit and visit with them and educate them. And that makes my life much easier, because what they do is then they'll go in and then they'll help make a plan for this and educate this athlete, hey, you can't eat just, whatever, Sour Patches before practice, how about this? And you're teaching them elite habits, and behaviors, and how to treat yourself to be able to compete at this level, you know. And I wish I had a picture for you guys to see right now, because we have a huge nutrition station in the practice facility right between the weight room and the training room. So as the kids walk down the stairs, and it's all educational, like, you know, they'd say, hey, this is probably what you want to eat before practice to fuel yourself. This is what you want to eat post practice to fuel yourself. Hey, during practice, if you're hungry, you probably want to snack on this. So MySpace, they do a really good job of really transitioning the students from, you know, Yancey's level to, you know, to Jeremy's level, you know. So I'm like right in between. So I actually get to physically see the transition of, hey, let's change your habits. You know, no, you can't eat 20 chicken nuggets and think that you're going to be okay. You know, so like for me, like that's just how I see everything for me.
So Jeremy, we support a club who, you know, had a manager recently who we like to call the football terrorist, a guy named Antonio Conte, who famously came in and did away with ketchup in the cafeteria space. Which
I'm fine with, just so you know. I'm fine with him getting rid of ketchup.
Ketchup is delicious with certain things, but yeah, not the worst thing he's done. But Jeremy, like, how intense or not is that at the highest levels of sport? What's that look like?
Yeah, not particularly. You know, it varies massively. You know, I think, you know, Nix and I had one athlete, you know, when we worked together, who would hide in the stall eating chicken fingers before games, in the bathroom stall, like
in the bathroom stall.
Yeah, that's a true story.
Wait, feet up, so you couldn't.
Oh yeah, like literally hiding. Yeah, feet up, eating chicken fingers in the bathroom stall. Yeah,
need to talk to their therapist about that one, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Right, so he's hiding because he knows he's not supposed to.
Yeah,
and so I think, you know, the background that people have come up in, like a lot of these guys are going to be really good, right? They're good at their sport and they're going to get away with it. So there's still a massive component of education when they get to the pros, you know, because everyone doesn't come through a system like Nix and Scott. And so we still have a big job to educate people. And I think what I've always tried to do is create an environment where it sort of happens to them, right? We create the environment where the food we feed them is absolutely elite, right? It's unbelievable quality. It's organic. It's super healthy. It's the exact nutrients they need, sort of what they need and when they need it. And so you can put them into a system that they sort of can't escape from. And we control, let's say, 2 or 3 of their 4 or 5 meals that they have in a day. And so let's try and do as much as we can with those, knowing that we don't control the rest of their day. That's where the education piece takes over. And usually we get to them, either they have a big injury and we get to spend some time with them, or they start getting older, right? And they start not getting away with it anymore. And they come and say, okay, I got to change some stuff. And so then you got to start looking at, well, nutrition, it's a number of things. First and foremost, it's what your body's built out of, right? You change over every cell in your body every 2 years. So you're currently building your future self, like physically. And so what do you want to be built out of? So we start on that level. And that's just healthy eating. That's for us, that's for your elite athletes. It's all the same. Then you add in the layers of sports nutrition where, okay, now we go from it being building blocks, but it's also fuel, right? It's fuel, it's recovery, it's all these other factors around health. So when do you need your carbohydrates? What form should they come in? You know, all these really, really advanced applications of then, okay, when are we putting creatine? When are we putting caffeine? All leveraging all these little scientific tweaks to the body. These are the things that we can start escalating nutrition to a level once you've built that base. Because a lot of people look at sports nutrition and be like, okay, when do I need my creatine? When should I take a protein powder? Whilst eating 20 chicken nuggets for every meal the rest of the day, right? Well, sorry, your creatine's not going to cut it. You know, you're going to need to clean things up a little bit. So I think that's sort of where we're at with nutrition, but it's a hugely emerging field. You know, now we've got our first full-time nutritionists coming into the pro teams now. where they're traveling with the teams, they're coordinating the menus. Because you think about the logistics of pro sport, we've got the plane, we've got the home game rink, we've got the practice arena, we've got the road arena, we've got the snacks that we travel with. So the logistics around coordinating nutrition are absolutely immense. You know, just coordinating the menus of what are we having and when and why, you know, before we even get to, okay, this guy's injured. Does he need to increase his calories or decrease them? You know, depending on the surgeries that they're having, you know, so tons going on there.
Jeremy,
So-
because I know Steve, I can see his wheels turning, like he's literally it's going. What do you have, Steve?
I think
Just
I know what
real
he's going to
quick,
ask too.
Just real quick, you know, you spoke a lot about you know, the role of nutrition and this elite level nutrition. I just want to read you a quote from one of our players, and I just want you guys to just really quickly react to this. This is James Madison from Tottenham Hotspur. His post-match meal. He says, "I'll have a big chippy. That's my recharge meal. I love a big chippy, fish, chips, sausage, curry sauce covered in salted vinegar." How does that make you feel?
I feel good.
I feel gross. I mean,
Look, if you're going to have it, that's when you're going to have it.
There you go.
Hey, look, like, okay, and this is where I've softened a little bit on nutrition. When I was at the college level, I was like fiercely like on top of nutrition. Like people would like leave restaurants when they saw me coming in. Like if I ran into kids in town, like I was pretty harsh about it. But then, like, I think the longer you go on, the more you realize that your athletes, they're not nutrition majors and they're not exercise science students. They don't care about that stuff, right? And so the more strict you become, the more they're going to push back, right? So if you look, let's break down that meal. He's going to the chippy, right? So what he's just done is run 15 kilometers in a game, sprinting, right? In a 100 by 50 meter pitch, right? That's hard to do. So he's just burned 5,000 calories plus. So he's getting a ton of carbohydrates, right? Which he's just completely depleted his carbohydrate stores. So his chips, he's getting a ton of carbohydrates. His fish, his sausage, he's getting some protein. There might be some healthy fats hidden in there somewhere, like that didn't get penetrated by the fried fish oil, right?
Absolutely.
So
yes.
hiding somewhere in the fish there was probably some healthy fats at some point. Now, I don't want him doing this after every game. Like let's be real clear. Like there's some really, really bad and powerful and bad effects that can come from this deep fried food.
But Spurs only play on the weekend now, so like we don't have that problem this season.
Well,
right?
yeah, and they're not worried
out.
about competing for titles and championships and all this sort of stuff. So you
no
know,
mid-season matches.
Take a lot of pressure off. You know? No,
he's also 23, so his body bounces back.
Well, and exactly right. And so this is sort of what we're talking about. He's not going to see the body fat creeping up. He's not going to see some of the negative effects on that right away. And if we're just doing that, you know, if that's a once a week thing and it's after a game and it's like your treat meal, okay, right, go at it. It's not going to kill you. Now, when we start seeing a guy's body fat creeping up and you find out he's actually doing that 4 nights a week, right, now it's going to start impacting his performance, right? So this is where there's, again, it's what nutrition and when it is the important thing. How are we timing our nutrients? Are we having a cheat meal? Are we giving the guys a treat? Because that's a mental health break. Like it is brutal to eat like boiled chicken and veggies, you know, every night. Like, holy crap, that's heavy going right there. So giving them a little mental health break with the food is huge. Because also think about how much emotion's tied into food. Right? Emotional eating, like all these people come at food with so much stuff. So if you start taking that on, so much tradition, and you start going head on and being and opposing that, man, you can get yourself in trouble in these pro clubs, as I have done on a number of occasions.
Looking at
Really,
you, Conte.
That's really interesting. Hey, let's stay on the nutrition tip. I think it's time for our midstream intermission, if the group doesn't mind. And by the way, for our guests, I bet we probably got another half hour in us here. So if you have to go, no offense will be taken. But if you're able to stick around for another 30, that'd be great. Midstream break. It's time for a very important question to be asked. And because we know that Gina is a longtime listener of the podcast, Gina, I'd love to let you ask the question that I have on my mind. Can you do it?
As an avid listener, I only hope there's fruit in your beer today, Mike, because that's how I like it. Hey, Mike, what you drinking?
Well, Gina, I'm glad you asked that question.
He loves it.
I love
when you
it.
ask that.
I do. Tonight, I have a kind of a special beer. And
Does it have fruit
this
in
comes
it?
from Steve's local brewery.
Ooh.
And I'm not talking about that barbecue joint that calls himself a barbecue joint slash brewery. This is a from 14th Star Brewing.
That's what I figured.
Yeah, they're a veteran owned, veteran run brewery. This one is called Rising Hope.
Well,
And
that's a cool can, actually.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
dope.
very cool can. It's got a lot of positive messages and stuff all over it.
There's kind of a Native American sort of vibe to that. Am I dreaming that, or is that accurate?
Yeah, it does kind of have a Native American type of a vibe.
Did I
I
see
don't
a
know.
fruit
It doesn't
listed on that
necessarily
label?
have anything to do with that. This actually, this was actually part of like brewing for the cure type of a thing. Some of the proceeds of this, I think it's over half the proceeds of this go to the NPCF, which is the National Pediatric Cancer Foundation.
Nice.
Yeah. So someone like myself who deals with pediatric cancer a lot, my sister does too in her life. This kind of hits home because we see those kids at the Vermont Children's Hospital and where she works at the Boston Children's Hospital. So this is a really good beer for me to do tonight. And
So once again, 14th Star. What's the name of it?
it's called Rising Hope.
Rising Hope.
And
Thank you, sir.
And Gina's gonna love this. This is a hazy IPA made with mango.
Oh, mango.
Ooh.
It's 5% alcohol by volume. I don't know what the IBUs are on this.
So again, for clarity for Gina, it's a fruited beer, but it's not fruit in beer. Am I right, Mike? Is that the correct language?
Correct. It's not adding fruit to beer.
Go get a mango right now and put it in that beer.
I like fruit in my beer. I don't know.
So Dave, I'm just looking at the back of this can right now. Yakima Chief hops.
Ah,
So there you go, Native American.
very nice.
I'm gonna pour it again into my favorite cup, which is my treehouse cup.
Nixon, I got to know, like, what are you thinking as you're watching this unfold? What's going through your mind?
I'm freaking out because I thought that was LFA, the Belgian beer that Mike was drinking.
Oh,
Figure it out the whole time. I actually really like that. But tonight with dinner, I had a glass of red wine. But the problem was, I don't know the name. I don't know. Yeah, my wife picked it out from Trader Joe's, so I can't pronounce it. I'm not going to try to butcher it.
well, you just showed us the bottle, didn't you?
Is
What's
it
the word?
Valpolicella?
What's the word on the bottle? Pontificus.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
an F.
it's a Petit Syrah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody
Really?
needs Nixon in their life. You guys, everybody needs a Nixon in their life.
Absolutely.
So, I had I had good dinner tonight and wash it down with some red just to, get me nice and relaxed to the podcast. I was so excited. And, yeah, I'm good to go. I'm a red guy though. I'm a big red guy. I do some beer sometimes, but I'm really red guy. But like Yancy knows, I'm 2-drink limit and I'm done.
Very nice. Mike does not subscribe to that hypothesis at all.
Do drink
So,
lemon.
so Mike, what are we thinking? I'm seeing a 2-finger soapy head. It looks like on that.
It was three. I mean, it was well
Three.
poured.
Okay.
It's dissipating pretty quickly. It reeks of mango.
Reeks of
Reeks
mango.
of mango.
That
I
might
can
be a
think of
good.
worse things for it to reek of.
Yeah.
let me tell you, like mango for me, like I cannot stand the smell of it,
Wow, it's so good.
What?
but it tastes delicious.
Yeah.
It's really I at risk of being crass, it's a real mind fuck for me because I don't like
Yeah,
the smell
that's
of it,
a
but
really
I love the taste.
difficult combo within a single food.
Oh my god, it drives me crazy. Yeah, so I'm gonna just get into this and see what we got here.
Oh,
And
boy.
Nixon and Jeremy, just so you know, Mike does a rating on a 5-point scale, and Steve and I, often try to guess and see how close we can get. And then he names a song that the beer makes him think of as
Oh,
yeah. So that's kind of how we play this one. So Mike, initial reactions. Give us some reaction.
It tastes it got a lot of mango in it. I don't know the actual hops that go into it. There are a number of hops that will that will simulate that kind of mango type of a taste. Some of them have citrus fruit attached to it. Some of them have pine, deep pine needle kind of smell and taste attached to it. Because there's so much mango in this, I can't really tell. It is definitely a fruity beer. I like it. I really do. It's really super light. It's hazy, like they say. It's fizzy, like a 5.0 IPA would be. So it's really a sessionable beer. Meaning you could have, sit down and have a whole bunch of them if you would like to, and as long as you're not, as long as you hand those keys off to a friend who's not having a session. I really like the beer.
Mike, we've
I
got
the
a really
four-pack.
we got a really tight scatter plot here of predictions
I'm trying-
on your
Yeah.
rating. So where you
A
landed? I'm really curious.
grove of mangoes or a bushel of mangoes. That's what we want. It's a
Mhm.
bushel.
We've got sort of
Uh,
conflicting view because we got the strong smell of mango and then we got the strong taste of mango. So like,
Yeah,
are they canceling each other out? Like, where are we at here?
it's possible.
They could cancel each other out.
Mike's mind is a complicated place too. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah, finding this out.
It's a weird place to be sometimes. I'm gonna go with 3.5.
Oh, damn it.
Man. All right, I'm just gonna throw out there. I said 3.4. Steve said 3.2, and Gina said 3.6. So you
And I'm going to tell you why
split the
this happened,
siblings. Well done.
because they all think, guys, that I go even numbers every time.
He does.
I
He's got a few tells. You know how like when a baseball pitcher has some tells about
Mhm.
you know what's coming. Like he has a couple tells that we can read. We're getting better at it. But all right, so 3.5 on this bad boy. How about a song? What are you thinking?
Because of the conflict in smell and taste, I'm gonna go with Beck, Soul Sucking Jerk from the Mellow Gold album.
There you have it.
So not Billy Joel.
No,
Not Billy Joel. It's not that terrible of a beer.
No fish. You went with Beck. Why did you pick Beck?
Because he's talking about David Beckham all day. It's the only natural progression.
Oh shit! Maybe that's why it's on the back of my head. No, I actually just I really love that song and just the conflict that happens when you smell something that you don't like the smell of, but you taste it and it's vibrant and fun. Yeah.
All right, that's
soul sucking.
That's well done, man. I like that choice.
And we've also mentioned the football terrorist tonight, Antonio Conte. So
also true.
Soul sucking jerk. He ruined me for an entire year. So
all right. Hey, this has been Hey Mike, what you drinking? With 14th Star Rising Hope. Yeah, good rating, good song. Like it. Like how that played out.
Great
well done,
beer
Mike.
for a great cause. Yeah.
All right, let's keep rolling, folks. So as we wrap things up next 15, 20 minutes, let's take it where it goes. One thing on my mind, and I'd love to ask you guys. So let's go Spurs for a moment. We tend to lament every time an international break comes around because we're like something's going to happen. You know, one of the guys is going to get banged up, and we watched our captain Sonny show some signs of continuing to be banged up yesterday, and that gets the fandom all in an uproar. Here's the question that I have for you guys. Who are the loudest voices in the decision-making process around an athlete and return to play? Is it the athlete? Is it the coach? Is it sports science? Is everything balanced out? Does it depend on level? Like how does that tend to emerge in terms of when a player gets back on the field or the pitch or the court or whatever it may be? Anybody want to take a shot?
I can start only because we have such a situation that plays into this from last week. Actually, the athlete I mentioned that was going through some depression things at home, my coworker and I did not think he was anywhere near close enough to being strong enough to return to play. And there's very basic, the two requirements to return to play: full range of motion, full strength. There's obviously more that goes into it, but those are the two, like, just basics across the board. This kid was nowhere close. He wants to play. His coordinator was pressuring him to play. Mom wants him to play. Again, we need film. He's going to be a high-level athlete. Somehow they convince the orthopedic doctor to clear him to play on Friday. And I've talked to Nixon about this a little bit, I think. So they got a doctor note saying the doctor explained all of the risks, etc. My coworker and I are like, mind blown that this doctor would write this note. This is clearly not in the best interest of the child, does not have full range of motion, does not have full strength. Well, what do you think happens in the game? Dislocates, can't get it back in. He has to go back to the ER, sedation to get it back in. More damage done, longer recovery, et cetera, et cetera. And like, feel terrible for the child, fantastic child, great mom who's just trying to do the best by her kid. But you just want to be like, I told you so. We've been doing this. I've been doing it 20 years there. She's been 17. Nixon's the same timeline. Like, I told you so, but you can't say it because you don't. So you just sit there and you're like, you're okay, let's regroup it now. Let's just get ready for surgery. But you hear all these voices saying the wrong thing. And like, there's literally, you feel like me and my coworker, they're literally the only ones who have his true best interest at heart, but everybody else has all these motives. And what happens?
Okay, that's Gina, that's a phenomenal example. Here's my question. I wonder,
in the high school setting, it's not our kid.
Right. And as you go up at Nixon's level,
correct,
there's not a tangible contractual investment in the player, right? Like the team doesn't own their athletic rights, but there's a financial investment in the player. So as we get to college, as we get to pro levels, how does that decision-making calculus change?
So my setting, I feel, is actually I feel lucky. I think just where I'm at right now is just a little different. And when I say that is we let everybody know from day one. And when I say everybody, coaches understand, parents understand, players understand. We're always going to do what's best for your long-term health. And when I say that, I'll bring up this example. We had a student one time, had a sprain. It wasn't anything surgical, but the integrity of the joint needed to actually completely heal. So doc says, hey, based on my findings and the laxity that I found in this joint, you need to miss 6 weeks. Even though the player was 100, but he was at 4 weeks, he's like, I feel great. I'm telling you, I feel I'm good to go. Hey, that's all fine and well. We're ruling to lose 2 to 3 games, to protect your long-term health. And like, that's the standard that's here where I'm at right now. And I truly appreciate it because the students And it was interesting for me to hear the students talk amongst themselves like, hey, at least these people here care about you. Other universities, they'll just let you play injured and they won't care what happens to you. So for me, like, my space is just a little bit unique. I know it's not like that everywhere, but for me, like, I just know, like, that's what, when it comes to like return to sport, return to play, that's how it would work. But if it's not something that's, that's going to truly impact them, like, let's just say it's something minor, I still don't want to make the decision myself. I still, as the athletic trainer, I want to involve my strength coach. I want to involve my other coach, like I still want, hey, my therapist, hey, let's just balance this. I want everybody involved in it, just so we're not missing anything, because sometimes, we are in our own silos and you might miss something, because let's say our sports scientist did jump him on the force plate and he sees a huge asymmetry and you're just like, whoa, even though you're telling me you feel good, the numbers aren't going to lie. There's something here that's going to put you at significant risk for injury. So all of that stuff is very important to collaborate. For me, that's just how it is in my space, and everybody doesn't operate like that, because some people just want the power to be able to say, all right, I'm going to make the call, which power to them. Well, more power to them, but that's just how it is in my space.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jeremy. $1 million athletes, $100 million athletes, probably a different landscape, right? What's that look like for you?
Entirely depends on the environment. Like, it's so different. It's so different, because then, to Nixon's point, you've got every ego in the room trying to be the hero, and so, but who's the hero trying to please? Like, who are you being a hero for? Right. And so, are you telling the GM what he wants to hear, the coach what he wants to hear? Are you telling the athlete what they want to hear? Right. And so it can be so different on who has input. So the way I set up the systems was, if we were rehabbing a guy, we had a criteria-based progression. So you had a number of check boxes you had to get to be able to go from non-weight bearing to weight bearing, go from walking to running, go from running to on-field progressions to playing. And you had to pass objective markers at every single stage, or you weren't allowed to go to the next step. And that gave us something, because you're always fighting against, like, the stopwatch is going. Like, if somebody tells them 6 weeks, which the docs are sort of renowned for, because traditionally the doc's the one that clears them, right? And like, for an ACL, for a doc, 6 months, you're ready, go. Well, that's like graft maturation, like, you just healed. That's not mechanics and loading and strength and all this sort of stuff, right? So then your doc's told him at 6 months he's good to go. Now I got to fight every single day to keep him out as long as we need him out, right? Mm-hmm. So at least if we've got these objective markers at every step, that clearance at 6 months from the doc is one of those markers. So the coach asked me, well, where's he at? He's in advanced stage 2 of our rehab protocol. Here's what that means. Here's what he's doing today, right? He's working towards this. When he can do this, he can do this. And then you start getting into on-field work, and now you're working with the coaches, and now you're really fighting against the coaches because they look great. Well, they look great because we're letting them look great, right? Mm-hmm. Right? We're letting them do things that they are good at, right? So you got those arm wrestles. You're being pushed every day, coach, GM. And so you're checking off these markers. And then the final check for me, we would do a psychological return to play profile that the player completes. So it's a questionnaire on how much confidence the player has to perform their skills, to not feel pain, to give full effort through the injured site. So you really break down the psychology of the player around their confidence to return to play. And they had to score above a certain amount. And that was the final clearance to play, was when the player felt that they were ready and they'd achieved all the objective markers.
I think that in the case, it, and I understand where you're coming from, Jeremy, because I'm a Washington football fan. And I watched Robert Griffin III go through his what was his second knee injury, and then come back way too early because he saw Adrian Peterson do it, and Adrian Peterson was a completely different animal. He was a machine of a human being, and Robert Griffin wasn't necessarily the same type of human being, but I saw that progression. And I said, man, he's coming back way too early because it was an off season from that knee injury. But then in the case of Hyunmin Son, we're looking at an injury that he had was happened early on in this season. And it's been kind of a nagging injury that has kind of progressed and kept up throughout the season. And now he's on international break. And we know how these soccer players take such great pride in playing for their nations. And he wasn't going to be told that he wasn't going to play. I think there was the quote that said, it doesn't matter what the gaffer says, I'm going out there to play. And I would have thought that Jurgen Klinsmann would have held him out. Knowing what he knows about the game and knowing what he knows about players, that he would have held him out and said, no, this is not a great situation. The fact is that, like, where do we stand? Do the trainers and coaches have a responsibility to say, listen, you also have a club that you're playing for that's paying you, that is invested in you and has to pay you whether you're hurt or not, because a lot of these contracts are guaranteed. Where do they draw the line? Where do these international coaches, international trainers and stuff draw the line? Because they don't have that responsibility to look after these players after they're gone from that 1 week of duty or 3 weeks of duty when there's a tournament. Like, what responsibility should they have versus what responsibility is left on the clubs that actually pay these players?
Yeah, I mean, there's a distinction between what responsibilities should they have and what do they have.
Right.
Right. We all have a duty of care for our athletes, and it doesn't matter if you're working with high school or, NYCFC. We signed the youngest player in first team history, in MLS history. Signed him on his 15th birthday. Right. So we got children, playing for the first team, all the way up to guys, flying to Peru to play for national team. I think you got to have empathy for everybody and look at really examining what drives their decision making. Right. These coaches, how many games you got before you get fired if you lose? Right. So your livelihood and your reputation, your ability to work in the future is on the line with every game you play in football. And so that's the way they're incentivized. Right. And if we want long-term thinking, we need long-term incentives. We need stability for coaches. But they will never be thinking beyond maybe 2 years out, maybe. Because if they lose 10 in a row, they're gone. Right? That's it. So if that's how we're incentivizing them, these are the results we get. They're playing guys who are banged up because they're this guy at 80% is better than this guy at 100%.
Right.
Right. And that's the calculation they're making. They're not thinking about, is this guy going to be okay for his club, when he comes back from international break?
Sure.
That's where, even as a high school athletic trainer, I'm lucky over where Nixon is or Jeremy is. My job is not at stake if we have a really bad season. Whereas someone in Nixon's position, or for sure Jeremy's position, your job could 100% be tied to the head coach, the GM, whoever brought you in. A high school, I don't have to answer to wins and losses. So my pure motive can be, hey, 16-year-old kid, your shoulder keeps dislocating. I just want you to be able to pick up your kids when you have them. And I want you to be able to pick up your grandkids my end line is not wins and losses, and that, so my paychecks don't come from wins and losses. Like from a sports performance point of view, people answer to many other things than I do, whereas truly my end game is the children. So I'm lucky in that aspect, that there's those other pressures, they can be there, but they don't matter quite so much as could for everybody else.
I like in it for me personally, I'm always going to do what's in the best interest of like the health and safety of, the person. Like, and I truly do not care if I end up getting canned for it, because if you do the right thing, it always works out down the road for you, but go there and you like completely sacrifice an athlete just for one game, for hypothetically in the RG3 space. And I don't even know what happened there with the medical or whatever. I don't know. But what I'm just saying is, if you do what's right, I feel like it always comes back full circle, because people are actually like, oh, wait a minute, that person actually went there and he fought for so-and-so to do not play, or he cared about his long-term health, so if you do that, it'll work out, and you'll end up getting a job, whatever, in Timbuktu or whatever, but you'll still have a job, especially being in this setting, non-high school setting, but that's just me personally, how I would approach it. I know some people would sacrifice the player. Oh yeah, you can play, even though they can't play. But that's just me.
Well, and the opposite is also true. If you're that guy, like, that's where we do walk a fine line in the pros between the pressure that's put on you from the management and the coaches, but also having the players' trust. Right? If you start becoming management's guy, the coach's guy, and you're pushing guys back too soon, man, will that reputation ever follow you?
Yes.
Right, because this is a small group of people, and they all know each other. Right? So if I go from Spurs to United, and I've been the guy that's responsible for a bunch of guys getting banged up, you better believe that that locker room I'm walking into will know about it, and so you're not long for that role. You're going to be out on your ass. So it's really it's in everybody's best interest that you just fight for the player. Just do the right thing.
Yeah.
If it's the right call for him to go back, let him go back. If it's not, say your piece. Ultimately, the decision might not be yours, but you need to be really solid in the case that you're presenting.
Like even last week, what I was just talking about, like we both made sure we were documented via text and email and everything. I don't agree with this. Like everybody wants to go ahead, but this is not what we suggest.
Yeah.
So like it's a trust thing. It's a fine line, but pressure and doctors and coaches are the whole thing.
And this actually goes back to the original question of like how sports medicine evolved and sports performance, sports science evolved, right? Like it's just really about like collecting the data, and collaborating and trying to make the best decision for the person in the long term. Because like for me, when I first started, we didn't have access to force plates. We didn't have to, all of this, isokinetic testing, all of this testing that you could actually see. Like, even if the player doesn't tell you, wait, I have a really bad, my calf is really hurting today. They're not telling you that. But when you test them pre-game, you just have them do something simple as a needle wall, and you see a 5 centimeter discrepancy. Before they go actually play, hey, we need to do some treatment on this. And they look at you like, wait, how did you know that was going on? Because the numbers won't lie, right? The data won't lie. So you could just make a really educated guess on like, wait, this person needs to address this situation, because if they go out on the field, they can help. For me, that's the biggest difference from when I first started that I see now, that there's all this technology and information that you could actually protect the players from themselves sometimes,
Well, and protect the coaches from themselves as well, Nick.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing, like back when we were just going off our feel and how they look, the coach could be like, oh, well, I didn't know. Well, now you put a report on his desk and you say, all right, he's got a 25% discrepancy in his quad strength. And and 15% in his glute strength, and his vertical jumps 10 centimeters different side to side. You put that report on his desk and you say he is not ready. Now if he has to go in the press and in his conference when that guy gets re-injured, and he can't say he didn't know. So what I found that the coach would never overrule us because of that. Right? Not because it was the right thing to do, but because there's no way he could make a case for why he made the decision to put him back in.
Yeah. Nixon, you motivated me. I need to start working on my knee to wall discrepancy. If you could send me some tactics on how to.
It's about time.
Yeah, right.
I just think it's cute that people like Nixon have time to test all those things and have all that data, because I have 500 kids in my room trying to get Band-Aids and get their wrists all of the same.
Well, for me, like I tell the parents though, again, I only have 12 athletes, but for me, I'm not going to wait until I treat their kids like Formula One cars. I'm not going to wait until something goes wrong. Like they're always tuning up those cars, looking for stuff. I'm that guy just trying to find, hey, what's wrong today? Even if they don't say anything, I'm looking, I'm just trying to find anything to just help these kids and what's to come. That's the beauty of the setting that I'm in and the sport that I have.
Yeah. Jeremy, do you have an F1 team, Jeremy?
Oh yeah. Big Mercedes fan.
Big Mercedes fan. All right.
Yeah.
Mike and I are McLaren guys. Just coincidentally.
Okay, I can respect that.
Landed there, yeah.
Oh wow, you're the first one to ever say that to us, because
Right,
I got a lot of backlash from some English
no,
fans.
but it fits with
I'm
the
a
whole
Lando.
theme of
I'm a
not
Lando
winning
Norris
anything,
guy.
right? Like
Nixon, how
I'm
about
Lando.
you? Nixon, you got an F1 team, or are you just using that reference to talk about your athletes?
I just use that reference. While parents, so
yeah, wows the parents. Your child is a finely tuned race car, ma'am. Hey, I'm gonna take a risk here. We've reached, or we're approaching our end time. We need to wrap. When I do work meetings of decent size, I tend to kind of wrap up and say, hey, what are our takeaways from this? And just kind of whip around the room with any takeaways that folks might have. And I'm kind of feeling that might be the right play right now. So Steve, let's start with you. What are you taking away from tonight? What'd you hear?
My big takeaway is that there's no clear right answer when it comes to sports medicine, player fitness. It's a whole lot of data points that get combined together, and you need a bunch of different people involved in the decision making, even at the youngest levels, right? It's not just the students, it's the parents as well. It's the trainers, it's the coaches to maybe a lesser degree, but there's a lot involved in any of these decisions. And to say, if we're looking at like Son, for an example, and trying to figure out should he have played in his international friendly, there's no right answer to that, right? Like we don't know his exact situation. We don't know the advice he's been given. We don't know how many people have talked to him or have advised him in certain ways. And it's difficult to say that there's a right or wrong answer, right? It's just going to boil down to any number of things, and only time's going to tell us whether or not the decision was worth it or if it backfires tremendously. But I love hearing about the evolution throughout all levels of play. I loved hearing about how there's constant learning going on and constant change, and how the mentality is pretty much perpetually in flux, so that all professionals are looking to improve, right? Like just the conversation that I've had with the three of you guesting with us tonight is basically nobody's content to just stay and do the same thing all the time, right? You're all looking to do better for the people who's caring and responsible for. And not for nothing, that gives me a lot of hope for not just athletes at high levels, but for my own son when he gets into athletics in the next couple of years, that there will be people like you who are thinking ahead and thinking, okay, well, how can I best protect those who I'm responsible for? How can I make them stronger? How can I make them recover from injuries at a better, more safe way so that they're not risking re-injuring themselves again? So it's been a fantastic conversation, and I've really appreciated having each of you on to share your points of view. It's been super enlightening for me. So thank you for me specifically. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Steve, nailed that one, man. Well done. Jeremy, Nixon, Gina, you've been hanging with three schmucks this evening and talking about what you do, but I'm curious, like, did you take away anything from just talking to your colleagues or again, three schmucks who support Spurs? Jeremy, any takeaways for you at all?
Yeah, I think it's just so important to, I've been really spoiled in my career. I've worked for some really big clubs, right? And I've had resources both in terms of people. I've had teams of 15, 20 people on my staff, in charge of 20 athletes, right? And so it's important to acknowledge the work that Gina's doing, at the high school level, and because that's where it starts for us. All right, if we don't have great care in our athletes at the high school level, by the time they get to us in the pros, if they do, for that matter, right, we see people coming out of really poor management in high school who drop off. They don't make it, right? And so I think that's really important to acknowledge that you won't always have the resources, both in terms of people, in terms of financial, in terms of technology, but there's people out there finding a way to make it work, and doing such a wonderful job for these athletes. So that's the big takeaway is don't think that what we do at the top is what happens everywhere, right? Because we're very spoiled, and we should all acknowledge that. And I think we should all spend time doing the other, right? Because man, you become resourceful. So Gina, thank you.
Yeah, well put. Let's go to Gina real quick. Gina, what takeaways do you have?
Thank you for saying that, Jeremy. That does mean a lot. And I was actually joking with Maddie, with my coworker today. Nixon, when he comes to my training room, he's mind blown. He cannot handle it. And I'm mind blown by what he tells me he does for his kids. We both have the same certification. We both have the same letters behind our name. I could not do his job. He could not do mine. We all it's just a different niche. There's different pieces to sports medicine for sure. For the casual fan, sometimes I wish people remembered more that these athletes who aren't performing are just people. Their mom's sick. Something's happening at home. With my kids, they don't have a parent there. They don't have a parent who loves them. It's Nixon's kids have different issues. They're in school that's so hard that the seven of us together would struggle to get through their coursework. Like, all these kids have stressors on them that we just don't think about how it affects lives. Dave and I just went through a huge family stress. It's been affecting me it's been a good over 2 months. But it's still affecting me day to day, but nobody knows it. You don't see it. It's not written on my forehead. So I just wish the general fan more would remember these are human beings. There's reasons, there's injuries they're playing through sometimes. There's mental health stuff, family stuff, like just all of these factors that go into this person that's maybe why they're not as successful as you want them to. So
yeah,
that's my thing. Go ahead.
That's well put. That's all I was going to say. Is that was really well put. Yeah. Nicely done. I think about all the times we've talked about players who've struggled, and then it comes out like there was a big thing, and in the instance, you're like, this guy just sucks. Why is he so bad? But there was a thing, and it affects that. So yeah, well put, Gina. Good job. And Nixon, over to you. What kind of takeaways you got?
Biggest thing. First of all, thanks so much for having us on. This was so fun. Oh my goodness. I've listened to a couple of episodes before, but just actually being on it and interacting with you guys, Stephen, Mike, Dave, it really was fun. But what I want to just talk about just a little bit before we go is just like the importance of like how everything kind of is cross-sectional, right? Like after I would come from the NBA combines and doing all of that, I want to go sit in Gina's training, and she's going to make me more efficient. Like just me or interact with 300 athletes a day. And like, I'm just like, how in the world are you doing that? But I'm picking up on just little things that I could bring back to where if I have 3 people in the same room at the same time, I can handle that, compared to her 300, that's one thing. And then 2, I was just really fortunate to work with Jeremy at he's very humble, but he was just so far ahead of the curve when it comes to actually bringing the performance team together. And when I say that is, just really trying to gather all the information, bring everybody together and collaboratively make the best decision for everybody. I seen it in person working with him, and then his results, our results as a group was we had a very, I guess you would call it successful rate of injury, right? Like, I mean, would call it, just because when everybody, uses everybody's strength and actually works as a team, like in football. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to just talk about that a little bit. That was just like my big takeaway, because even though you have the high school, the university, and the professional, but it all kind of like, it's cross-section. All help each other and learn from each other. So
excellent.
Next, I just want to follow up on that, real quick, because people always assume that the best people are at the top. And I think a lot of people at the top convince themselves of that. But just so Nick says, you go to those other levels, man, if you don't learn something, then you should leave the field.
Exactly.
Like we got so much to learn. We see the same 25 people all day, every day.
Exactly.
But
go into the trenches.
When I need something specific, when I need to know how to treat a specific injury, a specific rehab, Nixon is my first text.
Yeah.
Do I rehab this kid? I haven't had one of those, and he lays it right out, and he's right every time.
And then Dave, here's what happens now. Then when that conversation gets a bit rough, the first person I'm calling, hey, Jeremy, I need help. So it all kind of goes together. It literally all goes together. We all help each other. If I have a tough case, I'm calling Jeremy, I'm calling Robbie, and we're gonna figure it out, as a group,
When Nixon has a concussion issue, who's he called?
Interesting.
10 a week, and I might see one every 5 years.
Very interesting. Hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, good stuff. Mike, how about over to you? What are you taking away from this? What'd you hear?
Quick takeaway for me is that now that I've spoken with folks in the sports science and rehab and it's just sports science in general, in 3 different levels, I really now see what goes into the making of an athlete, and the way that athletes evolve, but also I've taken away the fact that, again, these are all just human beings. So we don't just need to apply all this stuff for the athletes in our lives, and whether they're student athletes, whether they're professional athletes, we don't have to apply. We can apply these to all people, and it just happens that athletes have the resources like these folks we've talked to today. And we've gotten to talk to people from three different areas that really drive my outside of my personal life. I love the fact that Gina does what she does. I really think that it's probably the most important part of developing a young student athlete. I love the fact that Nixon works for my very favorite university on the planet, and does what he does for that program. And I'm going to say again, Nixon, I'll say it online live. Love the Notre Dame campus must be buzzing after that beat down of those dirty, slimy Trojans.
That's a great follow-up from the "they're all humans" piece.
Right. The truth comes out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then Jeremy, like to be able to listen to you speak, it really, like all of you guys really though, but it brings out that nerdy science guy in me that got into the healthcare industry, or the healthcare the hospital industry that I'm in right now, and the care of patients that I'm in right now. Like it really drives home like the reasons that I did it. Like all of you guys, like it whether I'm just at the diagnosis level mostly. I do a little bit of the vascular stuff, so I'm at the therapeutic level at that end too. But like when I hear you guys talk, I really see that the passion that you guys have for your work, and I really enjoyed speaking to all of you, and seeing what goes into what you guys do every day, whether it be on Gina's level to Jeremy's level, and in between. And it's just amazing to have had this conversation with you guys. I know I'm very long-winded and I tend to ramble, so usually this is the part where Dave cuts me off, but
And
I could talk to you guys all night.
No, I mean,
I just could.
yeah, and that's the thing I want to say for a takeaway. This conversation has been fun. I could do this for hours, but I realize everybody has to get on with their lives. So I want to say to you, Jeremy, Gina, and Nixon, appreciate your time. First of all, appreciate you sharing your expertise. Not just for us, but for anybody who gets a chance to listen to this. Please know, open invitation anytime you want to come back and rejoin us on the podcast to talk either about your profession or just talk about things as simple as football. Happy to do that as well. But we're grateful for you, and to everybody who listens out there, we're grateful for you, appreciate you, and love you as well. As we wrap up, Steve, you probably have two things you'd like to say before we walk away. What would that be?
Quiz.
And
Don't be an asshole.
thank you, sir. And Michael, how about you?
World is crazy out there, everybody. COVID's back, man. I see it in my office. If you're around people, you've had COVID recently, you're just mask up. Just mask up. Just make sure that if you're coughing anything, just mask up and be safe.
And one more thing.
We've talked a lot about sports science today, but this is a podcast about our favorite football club, Tottenham Hotspur.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a great season so far, the first third of our season. So
you're stretching this one out, aren't you, buddy? You really are.
Ange has been great, and I love that man. I love that man to death. I don't know him, but I want to hug him. And I'm going to say Tottenham Hotspur action. It's Ange-tastic.
And scene.
Scene.
If he can find the button. There it is.